Hi everyone and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. Today we've got another big job. We want to put together the top cover of the transmission case. So that's all of the hydraulics, the lift arms, the hydraulic cylinder, etc. etc. So we're going to show you how to do that. Oscar's going to help for a bit and then he needs to go off a little bit later. So I doubt that he'll be with us all the time. But we'll see how much we can get done in the time that we've got. I'm hoping we're going to finish this job today, but there's a few bits that I'm not entirely sure about, and I know that there's one part that we still need to get. So, but I'll talk you through that as we go. So, yeah, this is how we do it. Follow along, and we hope you enjoy. Right, so as you can see, we've got lots of different parts. Some new, some cleaned up and ready to go back in. But let's just talk about the new parts for a minute. The main one is obviously the gasket set. Now, there is quite a lot of crossover between this gasket set and the gasket set that we had last week for the hydraulic pump. So, for example, you get a hydraulic pump a gasket in here. You also get the side cover gaskets, and in fact, you get the valve cover gaskets for the hydraulic pump as well. So this is A68551. Now the reason we needed this kit was obviously we wanted the the top cover gasket, which is obviously that goes on here. But we also need a couple of these smaller gaskets that are for the hydraulic cylinder that goes on here. And then also we've got the backup washer and the O-ring for the hydraulic piston, which we'll talk about in a few minutes as well. So if you're doing the top cover, then this is the set to get. If you're only doing the hydraulic pump, then the set that we showed you last week, that would be the one to get. So again, this is A68551. Right, the other one that we've got here, it's very heavy, but this is the hydraulic cylinder. So this is A68259. And you'll recall when we took ours apart, we had all that terrible scoring inside. So we do need to replace this. And this looks like a very good example of one. Let's just get it open. Now, the camera won't pick up inside there, but that bore is beautiful and smooth. I wouldn't say a mirror finish, because that would be bad, but smooth like it should be with the right kind of honed marks on it. Anyway, good quality hydraulic cylinder there that we will need as well. So we get rid of the box. Just a reminder, that's A68259. Right, now what we need now basically is a piston to go in there. And there's two options here. A90940 gives you the piston. Now this is the piston that style that takes the backup washer and the O-ring instead of the three metal rings that we had on the one that we took out. But the piston does not come with that, which is why you need this gasket set. You've got inside there, you can just see it peeking through the bottom there, you've got the leather backup washer, and there's also a rubber O-ring in there. Now to get that on, you have to soak the leather backup washer in oil overnight, let it and stretch it, and basically you have to stretch it over the piston and get that on first, and then get the rubber O-ring on. However, Anglo also sent me essentially a pre-assembled piston, which I believe has the O-ring and the backup washer pre-installed. There you go. So you can see that's how they go. Hopefully the camera can see this, but you've got the backup washer in the bottom and the O-ring at the top. And that basically goes into that cylinder. Now, this, I believe, this actual piston comes from the Forde series of tractors. I think it was the 2N and the 6N and the 8N or something like that. This is actually the part for the Forde tractor, but it's identical to the one for the Ferguson. And most people these days, when doing this job, are using this style rather than the original Ferguson style, where you had the three cast iron or metal rings. So those are no longer done. And the reason why is because those rings actually they do eventually allow the oil to seep through the gaps in the rings, and that's why when you stop your tractor, you've got your implement up. Eventually, over time, the implement will actually sink down because that oil is basically managing to find its way through between the gaps in those rings. Unless you're really lucky and you manage to get your ring gap to be 100% or next to 100% closed, which isn't really advisable because you need a bit of space for heat and expansion and contraction from heating and cooling. So anyway, bottom line is, get yourself one of these rather with the backup washer and the O-ring, and you won't look back. Again, if you get the A90940, and if you've got this kit anyway, then you get basically the backup washer and the O-ring in it as well. So either way, you can go and it'll work. Okay, so that's it. The other thing that I need to tell you, when we took out the cross shaft, the lift arm cross shaft, you'll recall I spoke quite a bit about the pitting that we've got going on here. I have tried to find a replacement shaft. The fact of the matter is they no longer manufacture them. Nobody's making them, so that you cannot buy them new. And I've had that from Anglo. I've had that from a couple of other sources as well. I did try to find a second-hand one that was in better condition, but to be honest, most of them seem to suffer from this pitting anyway. And the solution I've been advised is to use, rather than use the phosphor bronze bush, is to use these soft steel bushes. Now you'll also notice that it's basically half the length of the original. So you can see that you need 2 per side. Now, unfortunately, I've only managed to get 2 so far. So for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1 on each side, and then afterwards, later on, when I get the other 2, I'll pop them in from the outside, just before the thing actually goes back on the tractor. But just to be able to complete the video today and to show you the whole job, we're just going to put 1 on either side, push them right in, up against the lift lever, and then later on I can come back and just pop the 2 in from the outside of the top cover, just by removing the 2 lift arms and getting those bushes back in. So that's what we're going to be doing with that. It's also worth noting, Oscar, can you just pass me, do you see that ring that's lying there? On the towel, and then the part that's next to it. Yes. That one, yeah. So this is the original spring support, which, as you can see, has broken, or was broken when we took it out. I cleaned this one up, and I thought that these 2 parts were independent. Cleaned it up, and then obviously I saw, once I cleaned it, that that's actually meant to be a single part. Now, as I say, Anglo have actually sent me the replacement for that. But the other thing I noticed is that these getting broken, i.e. this breaking, seems to be a very common fault. I'm not sure why, and I'm also not sure what the solution is to that. But bear in mind, if you take yours out and you find that this is in 2 parts, it basically means it's broken, and it will need to be replaced. I'm trying to find out if anybody knows why that breaks, because to me there's not a whole bunch of pressure or weight or anything on this part once it's installed, and if it's installed properly. But I'm also trying to find out whether there's ever been any kind of improvement made, perhaps to try and make that a bit stronger. But my research so far has not turned up anything. So just be aware that is not meant to be 2 parts. Okay, put that back. Okay, so we're going to get on now. We're going to start putting everything together. And we'll try to do it systematically, and we'll show you how it's done. Right, what you can see now, we've cleaned out the top cover. We've also resprayed inside here. So we bead blasted that. I cleaned it with a wire brush and sandpaper as best I could. And then we've sprayed it with 2 coats of grey primer, and then 1 coat of high temperature silver. Well, it's a grey really, it's not silver, but it doesn't have to be the right colour. It's the inside of the tractor, so it really doesn't matter what colour it is. But really I just wanted to protect the surface so that it's protected against that corrosion that we found obviously when we opened it up. So that was the main objective. I think that's a reasonable job now. Right, the first thing we want to do is we're going to put the lever in. The next thing we want to do is slide the shaft in, but to do that, or before we do that, we want to put a bit of grease on these splines. So Oscar, if you could bring the grease. And actually I think before we do that, what we'll probably do is just put one of these bushes in. Doesn't matter which side. You can see these bushes are nice and smooth in there now. Okay, that's proving a little more difficult than I thought, but what I've done now, I've actually marked on here where the master spline is. So on the outside we can see now where the master spline is. And also we're going to leave the bush out for now. We'll put that in once we've got this shaft in. So, right, let's try that again. So now we can see the spline, and it's there.
This thing isn't okay. Now push.
Hang on, I'm just trying to sort myself out here. Okay. There we go, and that has gone
through.
Pretty much all the way through. Much easier.
And then we're going to slide that.
So yeah, if you try to slide that bush on.
Might need a bit more of a slide though.
Yeah, it's going to
need a bit of a whack.
Well, get the wooden mallet rather. Okay, so first thing you want to do is knock it straight because it's not straight. Can you see that?
Yeah. Just get some stuff out of my way. I have Thor's hammer.
Right, sadly the camera stopped recording and before we realised that we'd gone on ahead. So we've had to undo everything a little bit and we're going to repeat what we were doing, so obviously for the benefit of the video. But essentially what we've got now, we've got this shaft in. You saw up to us putting the bearing in from the side. We managed to get the other bearing in as well. Actually the second one was a lot easier. But that now is in. The next job is to pop the, so let's just move this out of the way there, Oscar. So what we want to do is get the piston into the cylinder. So the first thing we do is oil the piston, and then a little bit in the cylinder as well. Okay, in the cylinder. And that actually, okay, just wipe it around. Okay, and we just slide that in, and as it gets to the O-ring, you want to just twist it so that the O-ring doesn't get caught on the edge. And then we push it down, and Oscar's going to feel the air pressure coming out the hole at the bottom.
Couldn't feel anything.
And we push it all the way down to the bottom, which just makes the rest of the job easier. Right. Now what we're going to do is get the the cylinder onto the top cover, and we'll then move on and start connecting all of the control arms and levers. Now, there's a set of gaskets that we need here. So we've got this one, which comes at what's essentially the back of the piston, the cylinder, and there's a bit of dirt there. Oh, it's just grease. And then you've got these two rings of gasket material that sit there, and basically this gasket seals the hole where the hydraulic pressure comes in, and these two are really just there to keep the cylinder level or at the same height, basically to match the thickness of that gasket on the two front mounting points. Now to keep these in place, we'll just pop a little bit of grease on those, please, Oscar. Okay, so now we've got the gaskets on, the gaskets in the right place. The thing to note, I've put these bolts in. You can see the long ones go basically to the back, short ones at the front. You can tell that from the thickness of the top cover. Obviously I can't show you that on the camera, but they need to go, so the short ones go at what's essentially the front of the tractor, but the back of the cylinder. Now this is an important part. It's important to remember to assemble this lever and assembly, because that has to go into the cylinder before you put it into the top cover, otherwise you won't be able to get it on. So let's do that quickly and get this out of the way. Give ourselves a bit of space to work. Now this has cotter pins, obviously with split pins on the other end. So let's just work this out. So this arm rides across to your draft control. As you can see, it runs into the piston, into the cylinder over there. It can't go that way because you can see it won't fit in, so it can only go one way. This rides in there and rides up against the cylinder on these two tabs here. So those two tabs sit on the front of the cylinder, and for all intents and purposes they stop the piston from coming out when this is far forward, or as far forward as it will go. So the thing to do is to get this assembled first. It doesn't matter which way around these pins go. I think it's neater to put them in from the outside. So the heads are on the outside like that, and put the split pins on the middle, or on the inside. It's up to you. You can do it whichever way you prefer. Right. So that sits inside there like that. Your lever needs to be on top, if you see what I mean. And now we can make sure that our washers haven't moved. Let's get those back where they belong. Right, the next job is to get this into the cylinder. And it's a bit of a fiddle. There we go. Now we've got to line up all the bolts and make sure that the washers don't move. Those gaskets. Get that all in. Making sure that the gaskets are in all the way around. It doesn't hurt to double check. Yep, those are all in. We've got our lever in. We've got this lever in, and that is, the arm is able to be connected into the piston. Sorry, to the piston in the cylinder, which we'll do in a second. But right, so that's in. Now we can turn this up and put the nuts on the back here to hold the cylinder in place. When we put the top cover back on the tractor, all the bolts that run around the outside, they have to be torqued. I think it's somewhere between 40 and 50 psi. I need to look it up. But these bolts get torqued at the same time to pretty much the same, well, to the same amount. So, right, that's tight enough for now. So what we've got now, we've got the piston in the cylinder, we've got the cylinder on, this is the control arm, and then we've got the draft control arm connected as well. Now, when I get that cotter pin, I realize what I've done is I've actually sent it away to be remade because it was badly pitted. And I haven't had it back yet, so I need to follow up on that, and I'll get that in afterwards. But you can see here these lips, they will actually be quite close up to the cylinder, and if the piston were to come all the way out, they will prevent the piston from coming out of the cylinder. Obviously that would be bad if that happens. So it's important that you get those lips lined up and that this lever goes the right way. Okay, so let's carry on. Next thing is to get this lever in. Now this one fits this way. These lugs right up against this, the smooth edge, if you see what I mean. And again, we just got two cotter pins that come through here and hold that in place. So let's get those in quickly. No, I need to rework this. Somebody worked on this lever before and they welded up welded it up. I think I showed that in the video where we dismantled this top cover, and I think the clearances are not quite right, so I suspect, yeah, we've got a couple of burrs on here which I think is probably preventing these pins from going in quite as far, or rather these two coming together properly. So we'll just take this off, and I'm just going to deburr this a little bit and then we'll come back. Right, let's put some paper towel on to stop any of the metal shavings or dirt or whatever going in there. Right, let's just see how that sits now. Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot better. Right, let's get this cleaned up. And now, I also just polished these pins a little bit to make sure that they slide in a little bit easier. It's not, I didn't want to make them loose. I imagine you don't want them sloppy basically, so I didn't want to make them any looser. I just wanted them to be polished so that I can be sure that they are as tight as possible without them sticking. Right, so that can go straight in now, which is fantastic. Put it in from the other side rather, and then just bend it over. Oh, there we go. So that's our control arm lever now in. We've got the cylinder in, the piston in. The only thing we don't have in at this stage that we should have is obviously the draft control lever, but we'll get that in. We'll have to do that later. Now, one thing we can do, put this spring on. We will take it off later again when we want to put the hydraulic quadrant on. That's not quite ready to go on yet, but when you want to put that on, it's better to take the spring off, push this lever as far back this way as you can, get the hydraulic quadrant lever on, and that obviously rides up against this face down here. And then you put the spring on to pull it back up against that lever. That just makes it a bit easier to actually get that in that way. So, but for now, I just want to do that just to keep it out of the way. Right, final job really is to get the piston connecting rod in. Now, I know some people have some interesting names for this. I won't repeat it on the channel because this is a family channel after all. So we'll just get a bit of grease on the ends here. Again, this will all be running in oil, although not entirely, because obviously the oil doesn't quite reach up to the top, but it will get a bit of splash lubrication as the tractor is working. But anyway, just put a bit of grease on there just to keep everything nicely lubed up for now. And then we've got this pin that goes through, and obviously split pin again on the other side. Now in this instance I'm not actually going to bend over the split pin because I suspect I'm going to have to take this out again when I want to try and get this draft control lever in. So I'm going to just put that in and just very ever so slightly just nip that up and just bend one of the legs. Oh, that doesn't want to go. It's been difficult. There we go. That's enough. Just to hold it in place, and then we'll get that sorted out when the time comes. Right, I think I'm going to leave it there for today. That's probably about as far as we can go at this stage. We need to get the bushers in, so there's no point putting the lift arms on just yet. I also think it'll be easy to put the lift arms on when this is back on the tractor, or more importantly, it'll be easier to handle this without the lift arms on whilst we're putting everything back on the tractor. Again, all parts are supplied by Anglo Agriparts. You can visit them at angloagriparts.com, and I'm sure that they'll be happy to help find or supply the parts that you need for your tractor and for whatever restoration job you're doing. We thank them for their support, and I hope that you will help by supporting them as well. So once again, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to joining you on the next video. Cheers for now.